Cleanup is underway in Toronto after a severe storm swept through today, wreaking havoc right across the city. This is what it looked like this morning on a major freeway connecting the north of Toronto to the downtown core. Several people had to be rescued from submerged vehicles, while many others were stranded on the water's edge with no way to drive around, some trying to make the best out of a difficult situation. Now, all that crazy rain hit Toronto and southern Ontario hard. In some places, it felt like a tap was turned on full blast. CBC science and climate specialist Darius Madavi joins us now from Vancouver. Darius, what led to this incredible downpour?
It was a series of what we call training thunderstorms passing over the region, and because of the cool air coming off the Great Lakes, it really allows them to sustain themselves longer than a normal thunderstorm could. So it's not uncommon for Ontario, but what was uncommon was the magnitude of the rainfall that we saw. We're talking in just 3 hours, the more rainfall than you would usually get in Toronto in the entire month of July. So we're talking extreme amounts. This was the 5th wettest day ever recorded at the Toronto airport. We saw in just, as I mentioned, 3 hours, around 100 millimeters of rain. The record holder happened around 11 years ago, 2013, July 8th, and that was around 125 millimeters of rain. So we were close to it, and that disaster caused about $1 billion in damage. Based on the images and videos that we've seen, the flooding that we've seen, it seems very similar, if not worse, this time around. So expect, again, a major disaster. Now, you can see here parts of Union Station have been flooded. I spent much time in Union Station, never seen it anything like that with that kind of flooding. The Don Valley Parkway absolutely submerged. Other parts of the Highway 410, for instance, cars completely underwater. The Don Valley Parkway, you can see here, the river there, very difficult to tell the actual river apart from the highway itself. And floodwaters are dangerous in their own right. They can contain sewage and pesticides and all kinds of nasty chemicals, in addition to all the stuff under those waters that you can't see. Now, if you take a look here, you can see we do still have some watches and warnings in place, mostly for severe thunderstorms in the region, but also a rainfall warning is in place for areas including Brantford and Hamilton, Ontario, because there are some more storms that are popping up there. Unlikely to make their way to Toronto, but this region got a little bit less rainfall the first time around, so hopefully we won't see too much flooding there, but you can see here as that rain passed through. And if we zoom in to Toronto, this is showing just 4 hours, from around 9:30 a.m. to around 12:30 p.m. Or sorry, 8:30 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. around noon. And you can see just how much rainfall passed over that region and how much lightning we saw going along with that storm. Now, if we zoom over to Atlantic Canada, you can see that the storms are heading that way. Unlikely we'll see the same kind of impact. We won't see the same kind of impact there, but it's primarily going to be confined to the northeastern U.S. at this point. If we do take a look here, though, you can see if we come back to Toronto and the region, just how much rainfall we got in that short period of time. This is looking at just the area around Toronto over, again, just 4 hours. And you can see as that rainfall built in, we saw some really extreme accumulations. Just take a look at this. In some areas, as much as 135 millimeters of rainfall. Closer to the airport, a little bit less than that, but still over 100 millimeters. So all that flooding that we saw, not unexpected. Fortunately, we're not going to see too much more impact here. You can see a few more storms expected in the area just south of Toronto, like Hamilton, but generally that storm is moving off of the region. So, Travis, it was definitely an extraordinary day, but hopefully this seems to be in the rearview mirror.
Hopefully. Okay, Darius, appreciate that. That is the CBC science and climate specialist, Darius Madavi in Vancouver. For more, let's bring in David Kellershohn. He is the Associate Director of Engineering Services at Toronto and Region Conservation Authority. He joins us tonight from Toronto. Welcome to the program, David. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Were you surprised by the events of today?
We were worried about the events of today, but we weren't surprised. We saw yesterday a fairly significant amount of rain, and that led us to our first safety message yesterday. And we've been actively watching the weather, and we increased our warning messages early this morning when we saw the rain forecast increasing.
Now, as a lot of people have noted on social media today, there was this big flood back in 2013 in Toronto, which sparked we thought major investments to maintain infrastructure. Many people who were around back then comparing today to that point in time and looking at some of the same, pain points again where we had issues today. Walk me through what has changed since 2013.
Sure. Since 2013, there's been significant investment from our cities, from the province and the federal government to improve our flood mappings, our understanding of that flood risk, but also to invest in infrastructure. So there are a number of projects across the city, whether it be on drainage systems, on river systems, such as opening up bridges. But one of the big examples that's ongoing right now, we can see in the Portlands area of Toronto, where that project is, a big part of that project is about flood risk reduction, and it will include flood protection landforms that will take 290 hectares of land out of the floodplain of the Don River.
Right. And I don't want to get too into the weeds here because, we're talking to a national audience, but, the DVP, the Don Valley Parkway in Toronto, if folks have been to this city, is a major, major thoroughfare in the city. It seems to flood often. Back in 2013, it did as well. What can be done to prevent this situation from happening again? And we're looking at pictures of it right now, and it's pretty incredible, this site.
So the important part about the Don Valley Parkway is what we do during an emergency. The Don Valley Parkway is at an elevation that's fairly close to the Don River, so it doesn't take much water for the Don River to overtop and flood that highway. So we do have to focus on keeping people off of that highway during significant rain events and focus on that.
Were you surprised that it wasn't shut down earlier? I mean, we're looking at the river right now and pictures of it, basically almost about to burst its banks, which it did eventually. But were you surprised that, we were still seeing traffic on it as the water continued to rise in the Don?
It was a concern for our office as well. And I think one of the things coming out of the storm event will be to understand what happened and how we can improve things.
So on initial analysis, and I know that this is going to be kind of looked over the next couple of days with a microscope, what was learned from the events of today that you will perhaps be applying to the next time this happens, or that the city could apply to the next time this happens?
So I think we have to remember that a number of good things did happen. There were a lot of roads that did close quickly, and other areas. So the emergency services interactions, I thought, worked fairly well. For example, the GO line was shut down before it was exposed when the train tracks were exposed. But what we're going to have to do is do that investigation with all of our municipal partners to understand what worked well, what didn't, and then to adjust the emergency management planning that is already in place but can always be improved. How can we improve it? And then implement those changes.
Now, you said earlier in the conversation that, you warned people about this yesterday. You saw that there was going to be this significant amount of rain coming. Do you think that the response from the city was appropriate?
I think there are a lot of great examples of how the city responded during this event. It's easy to find those areas where something didn't happen fast enough from whomever's perspective. But flooding was happening across the city. This is a widespread storm event that impacted all parts of the city. We do focus on some of these areas because we see them in the news more, but it was a widespread storm. And so we'll have to understand through some investigations after how to make sure everything happens better next time.
Okay, David, appreciate that. That is David Kellershohn, who is the Associate Director of Engineering Services at Toronto and Region Conservation Authority.